Okay, firstly a question. Have you recorded audio? Please put up your hand if you have recorded audio. Most people, nearly everybody. That's good. Have you published audio? Please put your hand up if you have published audio. Good question. He says, what is published audio? Well, I don't know, don't you have a Japanese word for that, like dasu or something? Does that mean get out or publish? Who has done that with audio? Almost nobody. Isn't that funny? We all record audio, but almost nobody published it. Why is that? Why didn't you? So, Kiryu-san, did you record audio?
Yeah, I recorded many audios.
Did you publish it?
No.
Why not?
That is why I am here today.
Very good answer. But this is always the case. We record audio, but we don't publish it. Please think for a moment. Think to yourself, why is that?
There is no place where we can publish it.
Yes, I think that's a big part of the answer. There isn't any obvious place. Well, maybe there are places, like you can publish audio on YouTube. Some YouTube videos are just audio. I think maybe, and it's easy to put audio on the internet. So that's close, but I think it's more like we don't have genres. We don't have the way in which we can package or present our audience, and we don't know who we want to deliver it to. And this is a big problem, because as you will hear again and again from Anthony and Peter and myself, our methods should always be so we can meet our goals. If we don't have any goals, even for recording, then we don't know what method to use. So, for example, as you will see, I mean, both of us are quite actively involved in publishing audio, publishing multimedia, publishing video, and so on. That helps us understand our goals. We know, for example, that we want high quality, very listenable audio. But even for linguists who are doing language documentation, you do have certain goals for your audio. Maybe it doesn't include publishing. It would be nice if we did publish more of our audio so that other people can use it as data. But you'll see we can even find some goals just for listening as linguists. So anyway, I do hope that in the future there is some place or some genre, or you have some goal to publish audio. Please keep that in your mind. Well, what did you do with your audio then, if you didn't publish it? Keep it in the closet. Who keeps it in the closet? So, Sami, what do you do? Sami, yes. What do you do with your audio?
Well, I haven't recorded that much, but for some school work, you obviously, you submit a video report and then you keep it in the closet.
So you submit it to...
Yeah, for the teachers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What does the teacher do with it?
Well, hopefully they'll listen to the files. Yeah. So after that, I just put it into the closet.
Okay, so most of us actually don't do anything with audio, although we may listen to it too. What would be, who has used their audio for something? Anna at the back. Yeah, did you put up your hand?
Yes, I transcribe, actively transcribe, and then do sound alignment and prepare files for publication. So.
Okay, so you do some publication. Transcribing, who else does transcribing? Okay, so that's the main purpose for many of us, I guess. here's another question for you. Now this is a kind of like a quiz question. So here's the question. Digitally recorded audio, we mean digitally recorded like using a digital recorder like this one or this one, is better than analog recorded audio because digital microphones are more accurate, or digital formats are more accurate, or digital equipment is newer, or digital formats capture more information, or no, digital audio is not better than analog audio. I'll give you 30 seconds and please decide your answer. I hope all the staff, I hope everybody is thinking about this. Okay, that's 30 seconds. So who thinks A, digital microphones are more accurate? Who thinks B, digital formats are more accurate? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Who thinks C, digital equipment is newer? Who thinks D, digital formats capture more information? 1, 2. And who thinks E, no, digital audio is not better than analog audio? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's nearly everybody. So.
Question?
Yes.
Can you explain what you mean by more accurate in the first?
No, I just leave that to your imagination, really. So, in fact, what I think is the best answer is I think the best answer is no, digital audio is not better than analog audio. There is nothing essentially better about digital. It's a different way of doing things, and some digital equipment is better than some analog equipment, but some analog equipment is better than some digital equipment. If you're a fan of 70s rock, you know, and you listen to Pink Floyd or something, I mean, it's actually beautifully recorded on analog equipment. The difference is this, that with digital equipment, we can make it smaller and cheaper and mass production and make it better and better and better for cheaper price. So everybody can afford one of these. But to get this quality as analog, you would have to spend a lot of money. Right? So don't think that a digital thing is better. In fact, there's no such thing as a digital microphone anyway. That was a trick one, so I'm glad nobody chose that at all. This, in a way, could be correct. Nobody asked this, but most equipment now tends to be digital and of a higher standard than older analog ones. But if you can afford a new analog recorder, it would actually, expensive one, it would be very good indeed. Okay, but the big questions, the serious questions are these. When we record audio, or indeed video, what are we actually recording? That sounds like a simple question, but actually it's very complicated, as you will see. Are we recording language? Are we recording a person? Are we recording an event? Sorry, are we recording waves, air pressure? Good point. I think many of us are not really clear about that. We tend to get a microphone, we put a microphone somewhere, maybe just on the table. What am I recording? Am I recording you, the fan, the room, myself? then this question, what is it for? This is like the goal. Who is this for? So if, for example, you were recording audio to make a talking dictionary, these kind of things are getting very popular. Phone apps or other web resources, talking dictionary, you know, lexicon, click, hear the word. Then you have to record that in a very different way to how you might record conversation. So you have to know what the result is going to be. Who is it for? How will it be distributed? How will it be packaged? How will the audio be edited, put together? And finally, this one, what is the role of audio in language documentation? This was a question I took very seriously, and I published a paper about 3 years ago outlining what I called an epistemology for audio in language documentation. Now, this doesn't always apply, but I think it's well worth thinking about this. That this is what I say. I mean, I may be wrong, or there are other views, and there are other ways to approach it, but I say this. An audio recording is made in order to be experienced by a human listener. That is, we make audio recordings not as data for some machine or to be analyzed as part or, you know, for its formants or other acoustic properties, but it's made in order to be experienced by a human listener. One could still go on and analyze its acoustic properties, but actually audio of language is for humans. A recording therefore conveys what a human listener would experience at a particular location, in a particular setting. So, in other words, what Yukinori hears is different from what Christian hears, because they are in different locations. And some might be hearing the projector more, or might be hearing his neighbor more. Maybe his neighbor is sleeping and snoring, but he can't hear that. So this is my thinking, that the audio should be personalized and located. And then the documentation goals define the recording methodology, as I mentioned before. If you have particular goals, if your goals are more sociolinguistic, you will want to capture groups and the whole acoustic event. If you have documentation to capture lexical items or morphemes, you would want, or tone, phonetic tone, you will want a different methodology. Recording should capture spatial information, the information about the space around us, what we call sound stage. There should be metadata about the recording and the settings you use, because these might be important for understanding what's in the recording. Obviously, things like the place, the name of the person, the time of speaking, the relationship between the people who are speaking, that kind of thing. And finally, this is actually where I started, is that I think because we are lucky, we have these microphones, you know, they cost about $1,000 in this case. This is a very special one. Many community members don't have this. You have access often because you come from Japan or you have funds to good equipment, and people speak languages that are endangered and very precious to them. So at least we can use our equipment well. We can use our skills well to respect and exchange with them. So I actually think there's an ethical part of recording as well. So the next thing is evaluating recordings. We couldn't really make, like, who was talking about submitting your project to your teacher? So your teacher has to assess it, yeah? Evaluate it. We have to be able to evaluate what we do. Probably you didn't think about how to evaluate my recordings. Is it a good recording? Or maybe you just have a subjective or a rough feeling this is good, this is not good. So these things, you can use these things. So firstly, the accuracy you asked before. Well, I mean like the fidelity, does it sound identical to the original? Now, how can you know that? Simply with your ears, right? If you go back to the epistemology, all right, a location in an event setting, a human listener. So if I make a recording, or let's say you make a recording here and now of me, does it sound like it sounds to your ears? That would be the most accurate. That's all you need. And the people who are great experts in acoustics and audio recording and archiving tell me that the human ears have much more capacity to detect quality than any instruments. Okay, there are certain things that instruments can do, but our ears actually have incredible ability. So trust your ears. Of course, some people do have problems with their ears, but most of us are okay. There are also differences with age as we get older and so on. But for most people, our ears will be the best test of audio quality. So you can test accuracy by listening. The next one here is you could call it the technical people call it the extraction. Like, can you get out the information you want? So if you ask somebody, how do I say the word for cat in your language, and the recording gets, okay, you didn't get the information you want. Maybe it's because the speaker had no teeth, or maybe it's because it was a wrong microphone, the microphone was too far away, the settings on the machine. It doesn't really matter. It's not a good recording if you can't get out the information you want. The information you want we call the signal, and all the other stuff is the noise. So you don't really need to be, we don't need to be concerned about, is the noise caused by the projector? Can you hear the projector fan when I draw attention to it? Or is the noise caused by something in the cable? Or is the noise caused by something in the machine? Or is the noise caused by somebody coming in the door or somebody coughing? You really only need a simple concept. There's signal, what you want, and there's noise, what you don't want. And of course, what you always want is as much possible signal and as little possible noise. We'll come back to this later because it's not a simple question, which is signal and which is noise. That's not simple. And then finally, and I suggest this is really important, many of us forget about this, in most cases, who will listen to your audio is you, because you will transcribe it. Like Anna, you probably spent hundreds and hundreds of hours transcribing. If that is painful to listen to, that's going to be really bad for you. So if the purpose is mainly transcription, you want to make sure it's very easy and comfortable to listen to as well. And you can see that that's different to all these other things. It's not the same thing. Some more things here. Localization of sources. So this comes to the spatial thing. If you don't understand this, don't worry. We'll come back to it. Separation of noise. If I have noise coming from, let's say, two speakers, can I separate them? Can I hear them? Can I focus my attention on whoever I want to? And then finally, the representation of the environment. If it's appropriate, is there enough acoustic information about the environment where I'm recording? Sometimes I don't want information about the environment. If I was recording, for example, a talking dictionary, and I just want people to be able to listen to the shape of the words in isolation, I don't want to hear any environment. And then you could include other factors here, like what is the content? Like if I wanted to record say a talking dictionary and I ask the wrong guy and they give me all the wrong words, it's not a good recording, It's not really a technical problem, but still. And then finally, is this recording suitable for different purposes that you have? So this is pretty heavy, isn't it? There's a lot of things to think about if you want to make a good recording. Many of these apply, of course. I'm thinking mainly about audio here, but many things would apply to video as well, wouldn't they? Recording audio is both science and art. It's both. And you can see, I think it's ethical responsibility, and it's also a critical or a technical one or a foundational one for our field. Interestingly, it's the recording, either audio or video, is the single most useful thing you can do for communities. Because when you present your grammar to a community member, if you do that, if he or she is not a linguist, it doesn't mean much to them. But not only that, maybe there are sentence examples in there, but they don't have any personal connection. But if you record audio for community members, then there's a direct personal connection, because you can hear the audio and you can say, ah, that's my Auntie Mary. You can see the video, and you can see, oh, that was my grandfather. So audio and video connect directly, and they don't allow the linguist to cut the connection. Okay, when we do analytical work, we cut the connection between the speakers and the users. But for our recordings, we keep that connection, and therefore I think it's really important to do our best. And finally, I think, some people disagree with me, but I think it's not necessary to record everything. Some people think, oh, I've got to go in, oh, he's talking now, I must go in and turn on my recorder. So you catch everything. We hear that a lot. It's often an explanation for bad recordings. You know, oh, he was singing the song when I came in, so I had to put my recorder on, but I forgot to plug in the microphone, so the recording is not very good. But that's kind of, there's something very wrong with that thinking, because you weren't there the previous day, maybe the man was singing. You won't be there the next day. So that's actually a very egocentric view. The best thing to think about is how to make a good recording. If the man is singing, maybe you can ask him to sing it again for you. Or maybe you can develop a relationship, good relationships, so people are happy to work with you at any time. So I think it's more important to get good recordings than think, oh, I will make bad recordings but record everything. So let's talk more about signal and noise. So this is simply what I said before. The audio professionals use their ears to evaluate the quality, while many linguists mistakenly look to spectrographs and waveforms and such analysis. So this is not the way to tell if a microphone is great or a recording is great. This is the way to do it. You need these so-called closed headphones like you've all got. These are best. You can, if absolutely necessary, you can use a little earbuds, but you can't use speakers like that. Does anybody know why? Why do we have to use closed headphones to evaluate audio?
I think without that kind of headset, it is possible that the listener will be affected by surrounding noises.
Yes, exactly. So it is the case, when you're listening to me, if you're sitting back there, most of the sound you're hearing is reflected from the ceiling, from the floor, from the tables, the windows. Only a small part comes directly from my mouth. So you are actually listening to this room as much as you are listening to me. So if we use the speakers, we're hearing this from the speakers and also how this room shapes the sound. But if we use closed headphones like this, we're listening to the pure sound that was recorded. Okay? So for example, you know, if you plug in some little speakers to your computer like this, the speakers like this to your computer, that will tell you nothing about the quality of the sound. So the signal is what you want. I've mentioned these already. You want the content. Obviously, if you want to record lexical items, then that's what you've got to get. You may want the contextual and spatial information. For example, if you're recording in a social setting, you want fidelity, or what I call accuracy, and you want it to be comfortable to listen to. There's many sources of noise. These are the things you don't want. And later in the practical session, we'll talk about how to avoid some of these. So there's noise from the environment. Okay, so classically, noise from things around us. So Ogino-san here was, shuffling her page, and someone there was sniffing, and Anthony is typing on his computer. Okay, so it's noise from, people, activities, and often in field work. Some of you have done field work. Were there some kind of animals making sounds in the background? Nakamoto-san, you are nodding. What kind of animals? Deers. Do they make a sound? Okay, but the birds did. Yes? Any others? Cows? Dogs? Dogs barking, and cows mooing, and sheep baaing. Pigs. What do they do? Okay, so that kind of thing. So in the demonstration session, we're going to talk about that, how to deal with that. Then there can be noise from further away: traffic, cars, aeroplanes. Yes, wind. Indeed. And then from machines like mobile phones, refrigerators, fans, projectors, all these kinds of things, even some video cameras, a lot of things make noises. But notice these are not always hearable. So some people may have recorded, and they actually recorded a mobile phone making a sound like beep, 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 beep. Did you ever experience that? No? Anyway, mobile phones do this thing called polling. It's when they're looking for the tower, and they make this sound. So if you're recording, you should not only ask people to turn their phones to silent, but actually turn them off or to flight mode. Okay, that can really spoil a good recording. Electrical interference. This has happened often to me. If you run your audio cables near all the power cables, this can cause a problem. And often a solution is a simple one, which is actually to record, let's say if you have using a recorder like this, to record on batteries rather than electrical power. So I've seen it many times. Just simple thing, you get a buzz because of the power supply, and so you can just use it on batteries. And then we have noise, which is acoustic noise caused by things like reflections. Now, it isn't so easy to show here, but maybe we can. I want to give you a sense of what's happening here. Actually, as I move around, because as I said, you are listening to the room, you might hear that my voice changes, and you might, let me try this, you might hear that my voice is actually quite different if I'm, do you hear that? So there are two things going on here, and they're fighting each other. One is that actually what you're hearing, because it's reflected from this very shiny surface, is very different. On the other hand, your mind is trying to make it regular. So we'll come back to that point. But anyway, just remember there, you are always hearing the environment. then we have other kinds of noises that are usually caused by you. So actually the worst case, the greatest noise is often the linguist themselves. So actually, do you mind if I... So something that's incredibly noisy is paper. Can you hear that? And so if you have a list you're using for elicitation, terrible. Another thing that I've heard is linguists writing their metadata while they're recording. So I don't know what happens if I type here, but we've received in the archive many recordings. Somebody's talking and then you hear. Okay, so banging the table. I might be recording Anthony, and at the time I'm banging the table and so on. You'll hear examples of this later. Back channel from interviewer. So if I ask Anthony a question, so Anthony, when did you fly in from where did you come?
I came
Oh,
from
really?
Melbourne
Oh,
via
and
Singapore.
and sorry, when did you come in again?
Friday.
Ah,
or
and
Thursday.
oh, okay. So you know that's actually I am causing all the trouble there. Equipment handling, you'll hear examples of that. Okay. So how to avoid certain things? Well, handling noise from touching things, we'll do this later. But ways to avoid handling noise. This is a bit over the top for field recording, so you're probably not going to do that, but there are versions of that which are smaller or using various kinds of holders or stands like so. Noise caused by the equipment itself. So the wrong input levels, you can cause distortion or noise. At too low input levels, you'll get a lot of noise. Too high input levels, you get distortion called clipping. If you use cheap equipment, there's often noise generated by the equipment. If you record in the wrong format, that is if you record in MP3 or something like that, you can get some kind of noise or artifacts or distortion from the format. And this is one which is particularly a problem with video cameras and some audio recorders. They often have automatic level control or automatic gain control. And this is a real problem because when the sound level is low, they try to bring it up. Yeah? But if I'm recording him and he's not speaking, I don't want the sound level to come up. I don't want to hear the background more. I want to set the level according to his voice. So if you have a recorder with this automatic level control, it's really important to turn it off. And really important to look for equipment where you can turn it off. Some video cameras, for example, I don't know about this one.
This one you can turn it off.
Okay, but
Same as you can.
my wife has a video camera. You can't turn the automatic level control off. Video camera motors used to be a problem when we used tape, but they're nearly all gone now. So here are some possible ways for dealing with these issues, right? And we're going to see more in the practical demonstration after the break as well. So let's say there's a lot of traffic outside. You could close the window, but maybe it's not a very good window. Maybe it's a poor place, there's no window. Maybe it's too hot to close the window, and that would be very rude. Or maybe you just don't have permission to close the window. Maybe the window is stuck or broken. So what can you do? Well, do some work, investigate. When is the traffic? When do the cars, the buses, the cows, the horses go by, and record at a different time? So audio recording is not only about turn on the recording and connect the microphone and turn it on. It's also about finding out stuff. When is a good time to record? simple things you can do as well. So if, for example, I was recording Tashi, and you can see there's a window there. Imagine there's traffic noise coming in, so I want to record him. But you see, behind him is the window. If he's my friend, I can simply say, friend, would it be okay for you to face this way? Is that okay? Yeah? Oh, thank you. Now I can record this way and we don't hear the traffic. Simple things like that, okay? You could also use materials, like maybe you could put your coat or a blanket or something in front of the window or around the place. Children are often a problem. I found the best thing is that the best method is, because children are curious, get them involved, show them your microphone, get them your computer, show them everything you possibly can, because they will get bored after a few minutes and go away. Really, it works for me. Animals, well, you can't always avoid animals, of course, but you could choose a time of day, because maybe they make a noise when they want food or before the sun comes up or something like that. And then, as someone mentioned, wind and so on. Well, you know, you could use certain kinds of things to avoid wind. There are some cases, say, especially like in Australia where I come from, where we have metal roofs, and if it's raining, you can't record. It is just too noisy. So you don't try. You don't waste your time. You don't waste your consultant's time. So there's a picture of a dead cat, which you'll hear about for avoiding wind. So other sources, so things like refrigerators. You see, you might walk into a room and check it out, but the fridge is not on now. Maybe it will come on later, in the middle of you recording a special song or ritual or performance. So if you see a fridge in there, you should think about it. Do I want to record in here? Or can I ask permission to unplug it? Okay, but don't do that if it's very hot, and people might be sensitive about all their food going off. Motors, different kinds, fans, air conditioners, generators, all these kinds of things can come on when you don't expect them. So what can you do? Well, you should be prepared, you should be aware, you should seek collaboration with people. How can I find out? Where can I record in a different place? Can we move? Can we face this way? Can you lend me some blankets to put on the wall to make the place quieter? So you can do these kinds of things. Change the location, change the direction. We won't be demonstrating it, but basically hard, flat surfaces like this are your enemy for recording. So nice mud hut with round walls is really good. A car, inside a car is really good. Or even just avoiding recording against facing a wall. So for example, even recording this way would be better than this way. So looking from the top, here at the wall, so that's not so good, but that would be better, simply because you would avoid some kinds of reflections. Okay. So these kinds of things, again, keep away from doors, windows, traffic areas, face away from noise surfaces, avoid parallel surfaces or being at right angles to surfaces, avoid the hard, smooth surfaces, and if you can, find an airtight space. Now, this is a big problem. What is noise and what is signal? No, I don't think I'll play the John Cage performance. So has anybody heard of John Cage, the composer? Well, he has a piece called 4 minutes 33 seconds. You might like to listen. 4 minutes 33 seconds. And to perform this piece, you have the conductor and the orchestra, and then the conductor begins, but they don't play anything. There is no. It's 4 minutes 33 seconds of silence, and all the orchestra sit there like this. But the point is, the audience makes noises, right? Like this, a little nervous, and that's the performance. So in this case, the thing which is normally noise actually becomes the performance. So if I was interviewing Anthony and there's some children in the back, that's noise, because I don't want that, right? But he might say, oh, that's my son there, he's started school last week. So is that noise anymore? The sound of the boy? And then maybe the boy comes to join us. Is that noise? No, now he's part of the signal, he's part of the social event that we're recording. So this is very difficult. You can't decide this technically, you can only decide this according to your goals, your understanding, your interpretation of the event. You know, it may be that somebody who is making a noise like that, a sound like that, maybe it's noise or maybe it's part of the performance that you are recording. Oh, I should mention, if you are interested in the John Cage thing, it's available on iTunes for 150 yen. Just look up John Cage 4 minutes 33 seconds, but you can see it free on YouTube. Humans, we have incredibly sensitive ears, as I mentioned, but also our minds, our brains, if you like, are actually incredible processors of all the inputs we get, including sound. But by processing, I mean they don't just process it, they add a lot of information from your knowledge of the world, of the past, the long past, and also the recent past. So you know, because of your experience as a human in the world, what people's voices are like, and you know what rooms are like, and actually your eyes coordinate with your ears to give you a sense of where is the room, where are the walls, how high is the ceiling, and all of these things are used to process the sound. And it's a long-term thing, and it's also a short-term thing. When you come into a room and you see the room, but this is all unconscious, or short-term because if you move around the room, or I'm moving around now, you see the funny thing is I'm moving around now, but my voice sounds much the same to you, doesn't it? Even as I move around and say the same thing again and again, my voice sounds very much the same to you, doesn't it? It sounds the same even though I'm moving around quite a bit. But actually, if you use some instrument to measure that, you would find that what reaches your ears is quite different. But your mind is using all the information it can get from your eyes, from knowing about the acoustics of a room like this, to make my voice sound the same. So this kind of topic is called psychoacoustics, how our mind adds to the actual physical data we get. And some say that actually listening and seeing a kind of hallucination, that there is more accessible to you than actually in the acoustic energy that hits your ears, because you combine that with all your knowledge of the past. Now this is a kind of problem for recording, because microphones don't have your mind. And so simple things happen, like, for example, as I've been talking now, you've completely forgotten, you haven't noticed that there's a quite noisy projector. But now I've drawn your attention to it, you can hear the projector, yeah? And you hear there's some coughing. But when you're listening to my voice, because you can pay attention, because you can localize that, you can hear that somewhere else, then you can do, because of your psychoacoustic capability, you can do a lot of the things you want that you can't do just with a simple microphone. So, as I say here, microphones don't have edges like a camera lens. Well, you know, we can also use our vision, works together with our audio, but sound we hear in all directions, including behind us. So it's a very different sense. So as soon as you are just using a microphone, we have to think carefully about how it works. Another thing about microphones or recording is that you're going to lose some of the acoustic information, and of course some of the psychoacoustic capability we have. If you only want to transcribe, which we found out is what most of you want to do, then actually you're going to throw away 99% of the acoustic information. So here's all the information in the real world, and then you record something, and then you write it down in phonemes or IPA or something, and then you get some data from it. You've thrown away 99% of the information, of the acoustic information. So for some people, if that's all you want, it doesn't matter if you lose the whole of the information in a recording environment. But as I think we made clear, documentation is not only for descriptive or theoretical linguistics, it's for other audiences. What that means to me is a typical recording process we use is simply not scientific. We're not capturing all the information that we should. Okay, I'm going to skip over a couple of these. One of the most important things we can do is record spatial information. So that's information about where things are. This is actually really important in language documentation because we're typically trying to record spontaneous, socially contextualized conversations, aren't we? And therefore people are sitting in relation to one another, they're sitting certain distances apart. We might often, and perhaps preferably, use video to capture that as well, but you can capture it using audio. And it's kind of silly to throw it away. So we should record in stereo. Okay, here is one kind of stereo mic. And here is, if you like, stereo in stereo, stereo on steroids, like high power stereo. This is called binaural, where you actually have a head with some special microphones there, and it simulates all the, because actually there's a kind of little bit of acoustic shadow cast by your face, and your ears are very sensitive to this, and have, of course, all this wonderful shape for a reason. We don't have that, and they're incredibly expensive, but we do now have these kind of ones. So this is a new thing we have recently, and we're going to try this out, and this will give you an incredibly realistic experience of the sound stage. Okay, so you can locate things. So different kind, let's talk about microphones in more detail then. Microphones are the single greatest determiner of the audio quality. Firstly, your choice of microphones. You can see there's a very big difference between this or this or this. So your choice of microphones for the task for the setting is really important. And then how you handle the microphone, where you put it, how you hold it, how you mount it, and so on. So in the last part of my section here, I just want to talk to you about types of microphones. Microphones work on two principles. There are dynamic microphones and there are condenser microphones. Now, you don't really need to be concerned about the difference, but let me just explain that most cases when you see pop stars and so on, they're using dynamic microphones. And they are very robust, they're very strong, they can handle very large, very loud sounds, but they're not as accurate. For speech and for language documentation, we always use condenser microphones. So all these microphones we have are condenser microphones. They're a bit more fragile. They need power. They don't generate their own power. They need power like from a battery. So you always want to look for condenser microphones. And then the other thing to look at is the directionality. So I'll explain these: omnicardioid, shotgun. And then there's the spatiality, which is like how many channels or how well does it capture the sound stage. So I've just explained this about the types. So now let's look at the directionality. We don't often find omni. So omni means all. So these microphones, if you imagine here's a microphone and it's capturing equally in all directions. Yeah? Can you see that? And typically lavalier mics, do we have a lavalier? This?
Yep.
Like, well, actually like I'm wearing here. These typically are omni for a good reason, because if I turn my head this way or this way or this way, we wanted to get approximately the same sound input. So they tend to be omni with that pickup pattern. Now notice with this pickup pattern, it doesn't mean it ends here. It's not like a balloon, but it gradually falls off, or it reduces, or some frequencies in particular may reduce more than others. But the pattern is like that. The standard microphone, if you like, is called a cardioid because it has a heart-shaped pattern, something like this. So you can see here I've drawn a pattern, looks kind of like that. So it's more facing towards the front, but still kind of wide. So you can see it could pick up quite well across here, evenly. And then you have shotgun. They could also be called hypercardioid microphones. And these are good for a kind of focus. Now, it's not like a telescope. It can't suck in the sound from very far away. That's not possible. But it does have a more narrow pickup. So you can see here it's more narrow. And often have some funny artifacts around here, but something like that. And you'll hear later that the effect of this is quite startling. And then finally, stereo. So we've got a couple of stereo microphones here. Here is one. This belongs to Lingdi. Here's another one. Okay. Now there is actually no such thing as a stereo microphone. It's simply one body, and it has two microphone capsules, two microphones in it. Okay? So it's really a two-channel microphone, but with the capsules located in such a way to give you the experience of stereo, like your ears. So this sort of binaural, or this so-called ORTF, like this one here, this is now, for some of us, we're certainly recommending it, and the Austrian Academy of Science has said that this kind of thing is now best practice for field recordings, where you want to pick up spatial information. That is, anything but studio work with a single speaker. Now, I know nobody will be using this, but this is the direction we are going. Nobody will be using this yet. You can simulate these. We used to do this with 2 microphones like so, but that's rather inconvenient, and I don't even recommend that you try it. So if you don't have one of these, then simply use a stereo microphone. Now, people often wonder about the quality of microphones. Can I use a cheap one? What happens? Well, with microphones, you usually get what you pay for. There are some exceptions. This is an exception, because this is about $200. It's quite cheap for what it is, and the only alternative on the market is a German one for about $3,000. So with some exceptions, you get what you pay for, and good microphones for our work cost between about US dollars, about $180, $200, up to about $500. So this one was extremely expensive, but you wouldn't need to use that. But ones like this, or this head-mounted one, this is like $300. I don't know how much. 300, 300, something like that. And here are some companies that make good microphones, German, Japanese, German, Australian, German, American, Japanese. So you can see there's a good range. And all of these are good. And there are some other ones, of course, too. So we mentioned choice of microphones, but also the placement of microphones is important. In general, the closer the better. This is perhaps too close. In this case, you can, I put this picture in here because what's happening here is they're preparing to film, right? And when we make films professionally, we usually have somebody holding a boom, and when the cameraman arrives, then this guy will drop this down so it's just above their heads, just out of the film frame, so therefore as close as possible. In general, we say that ideally, and this is probably for one person speaking, microphone should be about 20 centimeters from the speaker. You can't always achieve that, right? So that's what he will aim for, to be about 20 centimeters. And then he will have to coordinate with the cameraman here to keep it out of frame. You may have seen films sometimes. Have you ever seen those when they make a mistake in the film and the camera just comes in at the top? Because that area, that's where the cameraman and the audio man, they're kind of fighting over that. If you see a film crew, it's very interesting. Now this, you can't always do that. You can't always have that kind of spacing. And to help you think about it, there's this thing called the inverse square law. Has anybody heard of the inverse square law? It's a kind of mathematical thing. So, Robert, it's not a mathematics class, but it just something says so something squared and then inverse because it's on the bottom line. So don't worry about the details of it mathematically, but you can see there a picture of what it means. So how to understand this is, if you've got a source here, then it's projecting out in all directions, right? And at this point here, at radius 1, it's going to cover, let's call that area, an area of 1, but at double the radius, that same energy has to cover 4 of those areas. So therefore, the intensity, the strength of the audio will actually be a quarter of that one. Not a half, but a quarter. And if we go to 3 times the distance, then the same energy has to fill 9 times. So therefore the intensity or the loudness, if you like, is 1/9. Now this is both a problem and an opportunity. It does mean as you move further away with your microphone, you're receiving less sound, and you have to deal with it. But equally, it means that if there's noise around, in order to compete better with the noise, you can perhaps move your microphone much closer to the speaker. Okay, I think I'll stop there.